Hi, welcome to Nothing Ventured, Nothing Game. I'm your host, GM Jared, and today I'm joined by Steve
Yep.
and Starscream.
Oh, how it pains me to do
Today
this.
on Nothing Ventured, Nothing Game, we're going to talk about retraining skills in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So, we're talking about retraining and how that works in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Now, what is retraining? So I'm going to throw it over to my rules arbiter because arbiter sounds way cooler than lawyer. So Steve, tell me about retraining.
All right. So retraining is any time that a player wants to change something about their character that they thought would be cool or they thought they would get a lot more use out of, and they're kind of not either being able to use it or the game in itself doesn't lend itself to be used effectively. And then the game system, the core rulebook has rules for when a character wants to train out of something and train into something else. So retraining usually requires spending a certain number of days of downtime. Usually spending time with a teacher, whether it's a physical training, studying in a library, or magical trances or whatever, like rituals. Some abilities can be more difficult or impossible to retrain. So there are some things in the book saying, once you make this choice, this cannot be changed. So anything that has that denominator on it, that obviously cannot be retrained. Also, there's a couple rules when you're retraining. If you're retraining a feat that you got at second level, I mean, it's a second level feat that you acquired when your character hits second level, you couldn't retrain that and then take a fourth level feat instead. It still has to meet the requirements of whatever the feat is at the level you got it at. So if you decided to retrain your fourth level feat, you can then change it to any fourth level feat or lower as a different choice. You can retrain feats, skills, and class features, assuming that the specific feat, skill, or class feature allows you to change it. And your GM will assign some sort of fee that you're usually paying the teacher or the person helping you to retrain, because you don't just spontaneously get this knowledge from the universe.
What if my character just gets the knowledge from the universe because it's magical retraining?
Well, imagine the universe needs a little bit in the cup at the end of the day so they keep the universe rolling.
I see what it is. You gotta get those magic herbs from somewhere. Basically, what you're telling me is I could retrain any skill, meaning like diplomacy, deception, performance. I could retrain a class ability. So if I have power attack and I'm not using it, I could retrain power attack. And I could then also retrain class features, which is like if I have fury, I could then, like as a ranger, I might have fury. And then I want precision because it might make more sense. I could retrain those, but I can't retrain my ancestry stuff because you can't stop being an elf. Right? Like once you choose to have like, oh, I'm a tiefling, right? Like maybe I'm a tiefling elf and I chose to have like hooves because that's one of the tiefling abilities. I can't retrain my hooves away. I can't be like, I don't want these anymore.
Like I said, if it says you can, if it doesn't have the you cannot, once you pick this, you cannot retrain it, then I mean, in theory, you could. I'd have to look at each individual feat. And even there's some class features that once you pick, like I think that the barbarian instinct was once you pick it, I think you're stuck with it. But then other class features, like I want to think that the doctrine of a cleric, I don't know, I'm talking off the top of my head here. I think something like a doctrine of a cleric, you could choose to retrain that to the other doctrine or to a different one. I'm not sure if there's more than two now.
Or maybe like a domain. Like you might want to retrain your domain. Like,
oh yeah, that might be an option.
I don't want to be fire anymore. Maybe like I've now changed and I'm only community, right? Like I've become like more of a peaceful.
If your god has that as an option, yeah.
I do know the instincts, and in the rule book it does talk about like you can't retrain your bloodline. Like you can't go from like
just suck out all your blood and then get new blood.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if and this is just talking as rules is written, right? Like you can't do that. Obviously, if your GM's like, sure, we can have a whole thing with this, you can do whatever you want. This isn't like us telling you like you can't do this. No, this is us just giving you the rules as they're written so that you can listen to this on your drive to work while you're on the treadmill. If you're on the potty and you got nothing better to do, and you choose to listen to us, we appreciate you. So, talking about retraining, obviously, there's a number of steps you have to do, right? You need downtime. Is there a standard amount of downtime you need, or is it just arbitrary?
Let's see. I know for skills and feats, it's a week of downtime or a month if it's like a larger choice. That's up to the GM's discretion on that one. He says on class features, you can change a class feature that requires a choice, making a different choice instead. In some, like changing a spell in your spell repertoire. So some casters, like sorcerer, have a spell repertoire, meaning they're only allowed to cast certain spells. To change one of those, it says, the average is about a week. Then the GM can tell you how long it takes if you're retraining something of a much major decision, like a druid order or a wizard school choice that you've already selected. They said those kind of larger decisions take a month.
Yeah, so this isn't something you're doing in between, like, oh, we just cleared out this room of the dungeon, so give me like an
No.
hour. And guys, I'm gonna come back totally as I know right now an abjuration wizard, but give me like an hour and I'm necromancy. Don't worry about it. So it's not like that. You can't
Yeah.
just jump schools.
Yeah, so look, I'm a wizard now. Give me an hour, and now I'm a fighter with a two-hander. No, it doesn't work that way.
At this point, right? So we know the rules, right? So it's about a week of downtime or a month in game, right? There's a lot of hand waving going on there. That's basically text me what you want to do session or not, right? Like it's kind of how you want to play this. And that is a great segue into kind of looking at it from the GM's perspective, the game master perspective. Um so Steve, I know you're kind of coming from this from the first edition, as a heavy player in second edition. How would you run a retraining thing? Would you run it as its own thing, or would you, what's your take on this?
It depends on how long yet again, this is going to go on how much hand waving would I do versus how much in game time I would take as a GM. It depends on if the player comes to me, we're really low level, we're not really into the campaign that much at this point, and I can see that the player picked an option and they thought it would work and it'd be more awesome than it turned out to be. Whether that's bad die rolling, whether that was they didn't realize 2 or 3 other people in the party already had the same thing, and now everyone's kind of rubbing on each other's kind of feet a little bit, or it's just they thought it would work differently and they're just not having more fun of it, or like the way the game is shaping, they're not gonna have opportunities to do their thing. At the beginning, I'd be like, all right, just change it. We're not gonna look, you're a low level character, you're a level first level, second level, maybe even third level. Okay, just go ahead and make the change and to be done. But if we're talking about like this character has an established career that they've been doing the thing for a while, maybe at that point I kind of make more of like a big deal about it and make them spend the gold, make them spend the week of downtime, maybe even RP this scenario a little bit to make it the fact that this is a major change that the character used to do all the intimidating is now not going to be the intimidating guy anymore because maybe something happened and now they're switching to diplomacy. So that may be more of a bigger change that I would more focus on instead of like, man, everyone has bon mot and diplomacy. I don't think I want to use diplomacy.
Yeah, I mean that kind of happened to us in our first campaign, Rise of the Rune Lords. Balin, you're a barbarian, asked me. I remember you were like, "Hey, man, our cleric keeps going down every so often. Is it cool if I retrain into medicine? Because I can use it on myself to give them the opportunity to maybe focus on different abilities, so they're not running up to keep the barbarian up in combat." And I remember, I think we were low level, and I was like, "Yeah, sure." And you were like, "Cool." Like and I remember you kind of, because we were talking via text. You gave me like a very elaborate reason why, and this was obviously long before we know each other now. and there's only time you like when I'm like, yeah, sure, I mean, yeah, sure. Not like, yeah, sure, but and then I just remember getting like a block text on like Balin's backstory and a possible reason why medicine makes sense. And I was like, cool, dude. Yeah, just give me like how much gold you got. I was like, all right, just
You
give me
do
half.
you.
Yeah. Uh, and in that scenario, again, we were low level, so it wasn't that big of a deal. I don't think we had a lot of retraining happen. But like you said, sometimes like players will sit at a table, and even if you have a session 0, and you as the DM, you try to explain the story or the what you want to get across without giving away too much, right? Like you're not going to be like, well, the big bad is the evil queen who's actually an ancient red dragon who is in disguise as a red dragon, right? So you sit down, you tell them the story, and then they come to the table with this expectation. They're like, oh man, I know we're going to be fighting a lot of ghouls, so I took religion, and then it turns out, you know, maybe they spend like one session just fighting ghouls, and then that was it, you know, and now they're like, uh, can I take Arcana? Like, would it make more sense now to have Arcana? Um, and obviously, I think also, and this is just from two GMs to other GMs out there. If you're sitting down and you're playing Pathfinder Second Edition for the first, the fifth, the sixth time, and you're GMing new players and they made a bad choice, uh, you know, obviously we're a little bit more lax with our how we play, and this is coming from Steve. Steve is the iron fist of judgment. You know, you gotta have a little leeway, but when you're like 10th level and they're like, dudes, I need to retrain, like that's its own thing, right? And then it also gives
Yeah.
the time. Maybe they want Arcana. Maybe the fighter wants Arcana. And then that gives the opportunity for the fighter to now sit down with the wizard and maybe start to build a friendship between the two. Maybe it's an opportunity for them to, the wizard and the fighter, to have a independent session. And then that independent session doesn't have to be 6 hours of gameplay. It could
Yeah.
be an hour on Discord or Skype or Zoom, or, you know, even a text chain.
I was
You
about to
know,
say, even
okay,
an email or a text chain, or even
yeah,
just a
email
Discord
chain.
conversation through text.
Yeah, you could do it a lot via text and get it across. And they don't have to do combat. Maybe the wizard is looking for a spell in a library, and that's how the fighter starts to learn, right? Like they're in the library and the fighter keeps giving them the same spell. They're like, this is it. And they're like, no, dude, like that's not it. And they're like, no, this is it. But like, no, that's mage hand. I'm looking for fly. And it's no, mage hand. And then that's the, you know, the role play between the two of them.
You can even use this to rope in an NPC that you wanted to be or needed to be important, and then that PC needs like, man, I really need this one like weird occult person because I want to learn occult, and maybe this spell that it's an occult spell, and it's an uncommon spell, so I'm trying to see if I can learn it from them. And you don't even have to use it for retraining; you can use it for other purposes. But for the purpose of retraining, you can use like an important NPC to, like said, maybe the PCs didn't really jive with the NPC and they kind of like, oh, we don't need that person, but that was integral to your story. You can kind of rope them into the retraining.
You know, there's a lot of opportunity, and especially with NPCs, you could even bring in maybe like an NPC that you want to and now the gears are turning, right? Now the magic's happening in your GM brain, and all of a sudden you're like, oh man, that one NPC I want them to start to befriend, who's gonna, you know, backstab them in the end, uh is now gonna flip the bill on the retraining. Like, hey, why don't you use my resources? You helped save my castle. I really want to, like, I owe you a debt. Let me help you. And then, you know, 6, 7, 8 sessions later, everyone's cool with this NPC, and then boom, there's Spider Lord of Death and Mayhem. And you're like, dude, what? Like, what? Like, you helped us the whole time. They're like, fools. The whole time I was against you.
I want to let it be clear that every time something goes horribly wrong with introducing NPCs into the game, it's Jared's fault. I'm always like, introduce NPCs because they're good and useful. He's like, introduce them because they're the bad guy.
Also, or or maybe they like in our campaign, right? So we're playing Red the Righteous, and everyone hates this one NPC,
You
Horgus.
did not make that person likable. I'm sorry. That's your fault.
They're not supposed to be likable in the book. They're not supposed to be likable, but Horgus is not a bad person. They just are, they just are an asshole, and you don't deserve to be killed because you're an asshole. You know,
He's getting closer.
Yeah, he's teetering on that line, but it is also an opportunity for it to bring up an NPC that maybe the players didn't jive with, and now that's an opportunity for that NPC to kind of become a friend. Maybe they don't become besties and they give each other friendship bracelets, but maybe they start to say, okay, well, I won't push Horgus down the cliff. I'll be polite. I'll tolerate this person for like a little bit longer, and that's an opportunity, and it really gives you the GM a lot of sway. A week of downtime is a lot, and I know I hand wave a lot of downtime. Usually my players are like, I want to make a magic item. Cool. Roll the die, give me the gold, we'll call it a day. Oh, I want to go talk to the blacksmith and get a sword made. Okay, roll the die, give me the gold, and we'll keep it moving, because you really want to get back into the story. But downtime's a great opportunity for you to have even one-on-one role play sessions with your players, and even have them flesh out their characters a little bit more. You don't have to have this grandiose, like, epic story with them, but even like a one-on-one session with your players, you guys will build memories, and then you know you'll have those inside jokes with each other. And I think that's really worth it. Steve, now that we rambled a little bit about how to GM retraining, why don't we talk about how to GM retraining? And by that, I mean the nuts and bolts, the rules on retraining. And again, I defer to my rules arbiter. So why don't you go over like the three big ones, because there are three big ones. It's feats, skills, and class features. So why don't we start with feats? Because I feel like that would probably be the one that most people would retrain. Like, hey, I thought what's that one? Hobnobber would be useful. And I got nothing out of it, but I need kip up, you know. So how does this work?
Okay, so you spend a week of downtime retraining you pick one of your feats that you want to get rid of and swap. So you remove the old, so once you spend a week of downtime, you remove the old feat and replace it with one of the same type. So if you're replacing a level 2 skill feat, you have to replace it with level 2 or level 1 skill feat. You can't change that skill feat out for another wizard feat. You can't change a class feat for a general feat. It has to be, if it's a general feat, it's a general feat, and it has to keep the same level slot. So if it's a 3rd level general feat, you can't pick a 9th level general feat to fill a slot.
Cool. So match apples to apples. You can't go apples to orangutans. So next one, skills. This is one. I mean, we brought this one up. Balin, retraining into medicine. That was a skill. I think maybe skills might be either tied with, skills are probably up there too, with like, hey, I don't need performance. I could really use deception. So how do you do skills? Is it a little easier, a little harder?
There's a lot more text, but it's pretty intuitive once you kind of listen to it and figure it out. So you spend same thing. You spend a week of downtime to swap out skill increases. Now, this is not swapping out the entire skill, which is different than feats. So if you would ever say, I am master at stealth and I am expert in occultism, and I want to drop my stealth and raise my occultism. So I spend a week of downtime and I take my stealth and I lower it from master to expert, and then I take my occultism and raise it from expert to master. What this does not allow you to do is the new proficiency rank has to be equal to or lower than the proficiency rank you're trading away. Meaning that if I was also master in performance, so I was master in performance and stealth and trained and expert in occultism, I couldn't drop my stealth to expert and raise my performance to legendary. It has to match or be lower than what you traded away. So I'm trading away master and stealth. I have to raise something else that cannot exceed master.
Okay, so basically, I can't go from, master in stealth and then, master in deception. I can't drop to expert in stealth and go legendary in deception. It has to be
Correct.
of the same level or lower.
So you
And it's a
can literally
week.
even drop master in stealth and pick up a brand new skill you never had before.
Yeah. So it has to be a week. So if your GM's like, hey, we have a month of downtime, theoretically, you could go from master in stealth, drop that down 3 levels, and level a whole new skill up to master because it's a
Actually,
week
no,
of
you
downtime.
couldn't.
Why?
Well, here's the thing. Remember that the new proficiency rank has to be equal to or lower than the proficiency rank you traded away. So if you're master in stealth, right, and you're nothing in occultism, so it goes from, so remember, this is going to be a little confusing, but stealth goes from master to expert, and now I'm training occultism, which I didn't know before, goes from nothing, not proficiency, to trained. So then I have, so I'm expert in stealth, that drops to trained. Now I'm allowed to raise occultism to expert, but now I can't drop stealth down and push occultism any higher because now I was talking about a trained versus expert. So it's a limit of how much you can push a skill. So you can never truly forget a skill and push a single skill all the way up because there's a limit, there's a breaking point there.
Got it. So that's how they stop you from like just instantly draining a whole skill and jumping a skill that you never had. Interesting. I like it. It makes sense. Perfect sense. Obviously, if you're, if you're a master in something, you've spent a lot of time doing it. I obviously maybe there's a lot of role play opportunity to explain why you're doing that. I think more or less it's probably players that were like, oh, I took expert in performance, and I realized I don't really need to be expert in performance. Can I drop it, and raise a new skill up to trained?
Or expert.
That's probably, or expert. That I could see that happening way more frequently.
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to what I was saying before about like how much of these rules that I'd follow. And even it's even almost baked into the skills where if you're just like level 1, level 2, level 3, and you're only trained or maybe expert in a skill, dropping it and training something else, not really a big deal. But when you're like legendary in a skill, you go, all right, look, I don't need this skill anymore. We're doing something completely different. And we have magic to cover that skill now. We don't even need it. Dropping it all the way down and picking up a brand new skill really is not feasible. Like you said, you've spent a lot of time learning the skill. So even baked into the skill system, it's a kind of way of like showing that even though you're trying to like forget a lot of that information, some of it you're going to still retain.
Lastly on the list was the class features, and I think this one is
the simplest of the three.
Yeah, it's definitely
probably the least common, I would say.
Yeah, that's what I want. Yeah, it's definitely going to be like the least common because I really feel like people grab skills. They're like, yeah, I'm going to use athletics, and they kind of like look at them, and sometimes they grab weird ones. They're like, oh, it didn't work like that. But like class features, I feel like players like pour over these, and they're like, oh. So why don't you tell me about class features?
So I think we went over this slightly before. You can change the class feature that required a choice, assuming that the choice did not specifically state it's not retrainable. Making a different choice instead. So something like I said before, changing something like a spell repertoire, it's something and something you spent time on, but it's not super integral to your character. That takes about a week. Something like your school of your wizard school that you've dedicated a lot of your time in training and you've gotten really good at that one school spell, or your druid order, your entire focus of being is a druid, and you're picking one aspect of nature to protect, those going to take a lot longer. They say that they require at least a month. Yet again, this kind of stuff goes into GM discretion a little bit, where it says, okay, look, I know I'm not giving you exactly a month, but we're just going to hand wave it, and we're going to say, well, I'll let you do and change your druid order from leaf to wild, or you want to become an abjuration wizard, but you were necromancer before. But those are more ingrained in your character decisions, and they did take a lot longer than just picking a spell at like 5th level.
Yeah, and you have to think of it like with the wizard school, right? Or that's like you got your master's, right, or your PhD in necromancy, and then you're like, you know what? I got nothing better to do. I'm gonna go back to school and get my PhD in like illusion, and that's the best way to look at it, like that.
Just remember, I mean, it's assumed that someone who's retraining is finding someone who knows the thing you want to retrain in. So you don't just spontaneously grab this knowledge from the universe and you go, I'm not going to be stealthy anymore, but I'm going to learn intimidate. Well, I just got to be scary. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to have someone kind of show you how to do it. You don't know that new spell you're going to add to spell repertoire. You don't know that skill feat that you wanted to learn. Someone's got to show you these things and teach you how to do it. Oh man, you're trading double slice for the animal companion. Well, someone's going to help you find the animal companion to help you talk to the animals. So part of this is finding that master or finding that person who knows about this stuff, whether that's another PC or whether that's an NPC or something. Maybe you have to find this person. So, and also there are costs involved of hiring these people or giving them money.
Which, I mean, again, that's all role play. You could play that out. I mean, that's actually a pretty cool thing. Maybe the wizard, right? So we're gonna keep going back to wizard because it's easy, right? Maybe the wizard, you guys have been fighting zombies and undead, and the necromancer wizard's like, this is wrong. I don't want to be associated with this. It's just terrible. And then they're like, hey, I want to find abjuration, right? Protection. Because now I want to protect, and that could be a whole thing. They maybe go to a wizard's tower and now it's, hey, I need you to clear out this dungeon, find me this magic book. If you do, I'll let you look at my first floor library. It's a 6th floor magic, tower. I'll give you access to the first floor. And then that's the month. And then, after that week, okay, there's this other, dungeon. Okay, go do that, and then that's how you kind of can expand the story on that. Just food for thought. Now that we talked about kind of how you play retraining in your home campaign and for all of our GMs out there, I know a lot of our listeners, our friends who play Pathfinder, play Society. You got into Pathfinder in Society. I got into Pathfinder through Society. Society is one of the cooler aspects of Paizo's Pathfinder role-playing system. If you don't know what Society is, we have a video on Society. Or just go to your local friendly game store or go online. You'll find the Society game. And so Society has, because it's in the core rule book, Society has rules on retraining and how a character could retrain while in Society. Because remember, Society, you're kind of bouncing world hopping. So you might need to retrain that arcana for occultism a few times. So Steve, why don't you, since you played the most Society, why don't you go over the basic rules on Society and how that works?
So similarly to how it works in your own private games, retraining in Society works in the same thing. You spend some downtime and money and you pick what you want to lose, you pick what you want to gain. The restrictions are all the same. Some of the downtime costs are a little different. So how you earn downtime in Society is at the end of each adventure, depending on the type of adventure it is, you earn a certain number of downtime days. And the way downtime days work in Society, you spend them in increments of 8 days. So retraining takes a week. For the most part, they take 7 days. So when you pick so some items are changeable for free, such as name, gender, appearance, or other cosmetic designators. Pathfinder retraining. So there's specific things you can get from the Pathfinder Society. I believe they have the Society tag.
Yes. So in Society, you could join a specific, not just like the specialized
the factions.
There's also they built through their Society book that just came out. They're now specialized. Like you could be part of even a sub faction of the factions, and you could get class features from those factions. So there's Society tags on that.
And there's also, I think, dedications where you can take dedication feats that are only available through Society. So anytime you're changing a Pathfinder training, that instead of taking 7 days, it takes 14 days. And changing a selectable class feature, instead of taking 7 days or a month, and some everything takes 28 days. So in society, changing something like your wizard school or that spell repertoire spell you don't like, mage armor anymore, you want to take burning hands, that's going to take 28 days. So the only changes there are changing anything specific to the Pathfinder Society, that's 14 days, and changing a class feature is 28 days.
And how would you record this? It's on your chronicle sheet, right? For our society players.
Yeah, so at the end of every mission or every adventure, each player is going to get a chronicle sheet. Now, everything that you buy, sell, anything that happens to your character, you had some permanent curse on you at the end of the adventure, you had to get rid of it before you went to the next adventure. Anything that happens to your character, you retrain something, you drop this skill, added that skill, you changed this spell, added that spell, that all gets recorded on your character sheet. And if it's downtime that you retrained, that gets recorded on your chronicle and your GM of the adventure, either the adventure that you just finished, or if you're still kind of making decisions, the GM at the next game, they'll sign off on it and just kind of look over everything and just let them know that you did some retraining, make sure that everything is kosher. And then it'll all be documented, so you know what level you did it, what adventure you did it on, all that stuff gets recorded.
And just remember, because society, you could take your character from anywhere. We could play in New York and then go to Gen Con and play that society character, and then bounce all the way over to Honolulu and play in a society game there. There are ways you record this, and you have to be very specific on how you record everything down. So if you're making any kind of rolls, you have to either write down the rolls or store them digitally, and then you have to show that game master that at that society game all those rolls and everything, or you could do it in front of them.
Yeah, you do it in front of, most likely, I don't know, obviously if you're doing it on a digital tabletop, the GM is still signing off on that chronicle sheet.
Yeah.
Or you're doing it in person, however the GM kind of checks off and makes sure everything's kosher.
Yep. So just make sure you record everything you do. And that's the disclaimer at the end of this right now. It's make sure you record everything and it's all on the level, because we don't want you watching this video and then going to a society game and being like, I'm retraining this, and then going to another one and be like, I'm retraining this, and be like, dude, you can't. So just, make sure you got it all down. Or, you could always just remake that character and just put Junior at the end of their name, and boom, you have the new skill you needed. So I hope you found this video enlightening, and I hope you can show this to your players. Maybe, show them that, like, hey, you're not stuck with every possible option. But with that, we're going to let you go. So from all of us here at Nothing Ventured, Nothing Game, I want to say thank you very much for spending a few moments with us. So for myself, I want to say goodbye. And Steve,
good night.
And Starscream,
Get us out of here!
Bye.